So what crowd testing is to bring together, it could be a professional tester, it could be novice testers. I'll talk about the kind of testers that are there in crowd testing, but bringing together different kind of people who are actually relevant to test that application. It is not just the difference between a beta tester and a crowd tester is beta tester doesn't need to be planned. You just bring in people and just tell them that, okay, do beta testing for my application, right? You just open it up to a community and then the community comes, whoever is interested, they do the testing and provide results. What crowd testing is trying to do is trying to bring in a method into this madness. They want to bring in a select group of people. So maybe a select group of 30, 40, 50, 70 people who will have certain specific skill set, certain desirable configurations, locations through which they can provide a holistic coverage to your application before it goes into a user acceptance phase. So upfront in the end of system integration testing, when your application is quite well set, you don't expect it to just fail at a very basic functionality level, you can introduce it to a larger bunch of people who can actually do the testing and produce results for you. This is all delivered through a public cloud, but these days a lot of organizations are also looking at setting up private clouds using things like Deskfly, Hockey apps, I don't know if you've heard about these things, through which they are doing more restrictive kind of crowd testing in a private environment, not just in an open cloud internet-based environment. So what it does is, first of all, it is performance driven. So people get paid only when they are performing. They are producing some kind of results, they are producing some sort of coverage, then they are getting paid. The other thing is, as we just heard in the previous session, gamification. So it is it's like a challenge. You are thrown a challenge and you have to complete that challenge in a certain period of time. And it could be multiple challenges. One week you do work on a healthcare application, another week you're working on a totally different kind of e-commerce application, and then you could be working on a banking application. So as a tester, you are exposed to very diverse kind of domain, technology, and different exposure you get on different testing types. So that way it is very good as a career development plan also for testers to understand different domain aspects, industry aspects, as well as technology aspects. Okay. It is good for a company because it is cost saving. It is much cheaper because you're only paying to, not for infrastructure, you're only paying for the work or output that is generated. So both sides, the testers as well as the vendors are happy because it is a low cost proposition with high quality of results. And what it ensures is it gets a coverage and results on all different types of desired devices that you want. So the difference between a beta tester and this one is, like you mentioned, this one you handpick. For example, if it's an iOS app, it has to be deployed on iPad or a particular version of iPhones. You only pick iPhone 6, 7, 8, compatible, whatever. And and those kind of people who have that kind of infrastructure, and only those people are invited. You may need people who have some sort of a banking skills to run that kind of mobile banking testing. You invite only those people to work with you. So only a select group of people is coming from select location with select skill set and delivering the services. And that way they are giving you a good feedback on different compatibility, on different usability aspects of an application. Benefits. First and foremost is on-demand. On-demand helps in saving cost, plus you get an on-demand talent. A lot of companies, including large corporations, are now looking into crowd testing to get skill access. They are using personal private crowd setups. So they can use some kind of a technology through which they can go through their community and see who are the people that are at bench or who may have the right skill to work, even sitting remotely at certain locations. What happens in large organizations are that we actually tend to have a sizable bench. Generally 70% is the utilization rate. And then a lot of people who are there, they may be free, not have work, but they're still allocated to some project because there's a pressure. Don't keep people on bench, so allocate on them on some project. And that way, a good skilled talent, even the guy is frustrated because he's sitting on bench without work. And on the other hand, you're not having access to people who are available. So through this kind of models, companies are trying to bring that openness or open culture within the organization so that everybody can have access to new projects, and they can sort of again make it in a more simple and easy way to reach out and access new projects and identify talent within the company. Coverage is one of the most commonly known aspects of crowd testing. It provides desired coverage. In your labs, even if you use some of the virtual solutions these days, like there is a Perfecto mobile solution, there is a soft lab solution, all of these are still very, very restrictive, because what you could do from them is you can buy certain hours and you can buy a certain number of devices. Eventually, 1 or 2 people are sitting and they're trying to simulate conditions of all those devices and testing for a few hours. But still, it is not same as crowd testing. You just hardly take 10 minutes to invite 20 people, and then you just open up the project to those 20 people. They provide you results within, say, a day or two's time, and you have the full coverage and reports. Another point in better coverage is it's a known fact about crowd wisdom. I think all of you would have seen this Kaun Banega Crorepati, right? In Kaun Banega Crorepati, the first option whenever there is a question that people cannot answer, they always go to audience poll. They don't go to ask an expert. The reason being, audience poll, when a large bunch of diverse group comes and answers a problem, there is a much higher probability to get the right answer. And that is, I mean, an old survey I read somewhere in 1800s, where an ox was kept in the center, and everybody was asked to assess the weight of that ox. And the whole collective group was more close to than 10 people who were probably butchers and more expert at telling the weight of the ox. But the collective group is always has higher wisdom because of the diversity. And that is what helps in identifying more bugs, bringing a new perspective, and getting more issues identified in a shorter time. Faster results is because the cycle, I'll talk about how to set up a project, but in any crowd testing project, it's very easy, because if you have a community with you, you can very easily reach out. There has to be a means to reach out to that community. Of course, I talk about technology part, but you can reach out to the community. You can identify those 30, 40 people, whoever you need. So you can start within a period of 1 to 2 days. Whereas in even a large organization which might have 30,000 testers, you may take time to identify and onboard people on the project, right? So in this case, you can get people within, say, 2-3 days time, 30-40 people, onboard them on project and start execution. Within 3 to 4 days, you generally see the test cycle is complete, because large number of people are working. They're sort of competing against each other, because only the one who's logging first is getting paid. So of course, they don't want to get into duplicates. They want to, lead and complete the cycle. It's like a contest. And then they want to finish it off before the other person to get paid. So that way it becomes much, much faster. You get results within 2-3 days time, for no matter how huge the application could be. It is cheaper. It is a known fact. It is 30 to 50% cheaper than even your outsourcing model. And finally, it is scalable, because you can have any number of testers. There have been projects that we do where we engage 400, 500 testers, and we put them all together with a period of 1 week's time to come and perform a testing for 1 week and then go away. So this is something which is not possible in the enterprise in-house kind of an environment. Now let's talk a little bit about the principles of crowd testing. How does it work? It's a very, very simple concept. You have a crowd, it's an open community. From there, you create your own community. Some companies are, piling on to existing large communities. You must have heard of Mechanical Turk, ELANs, ODS. All these are different types of communities. Either you build your own community, or you sort of pile on to some of the existing communities. Then you select testers. From those selected testers, the selection is, as I said, based on the approach that matches your requirement of the project. Then you allow them to hunt the bugs. They will hunt the bugs. You review those bugs and you deliver it to your customer. And then you pay testers the reward, you charge your customer whatever is the due. Generally, a community of testers should have a mix of different kind of skills. I missed writing coders. If I had attended morning session, I would have added coders also here. So there should be some developers also. But mostly it has to be professional testers. This is very important. You can have some software users. You can have some employees, contractors of different organizations, and subject matter experts. It's very, very important. So if you're working on a banking application, it is good to have some people who have expertise in banking to sort of come and give their feedback on. How does the business model work? Testers receive one, direct benefits through financials. Second, they have a career development kind of an opportunity with different kind of exposure to different types of projects. The client receives the results in terms of whatever. It could be reports, observation reports, bugs, it could be feedback surveys, whatever it is. And what they pay is, it could be three types of models. They could pay a fixed lump sum fee, they could pay per bug kind of a fee, or they could pay a subscription where they run a cycle on a monthly basis and then they pay. How the crowds are structured is also very, very interesting. Some companies who are providing crowd services are organizing an in-house setup of management, and they're only using crowd for test execution or maybe designing. While some companies are keeping only a very lean internal team and they're sort of opening up everything to the community. So in this case, even the crowd testers are doing your designing, they are doing project planning. So it is more like an on-demand part-time resources who are engaged to do specific tasks, and then a larger community is introduced to do the bug execution and reporting. The forms of crowd are three types. First form is you go with a purely public community. Purely public community could be something that is already existing or you develop on your own. The second kind is a hybrid community where organizations are using their bench as crowd. And then on top of that, on demand basis, if they have to get localization coverage, they have to get some specific coverage, they go to a public community and engage people. And third is that in a very, very secure environment, some banks are using purely private community, only using their bench strength to deliver crowd testing projects. So only using say 20–30% of the people who are on the bench, and they are delivering additional projects on top of what the typical enterprises projects are working. This is a very interesting point, which is again something that a lot of people don't understand. And most of the time people think that crowd testing is only beta testing. Actually, crowd testing is a concept. Okay, it is something that we can introduce as an on-demand model at any point. And as the world is moving more towards BYODs, freelancers, work from home options, the crowd testing is like a culmination of all of them at one place, right? So people use their own devices, they can work from home, and they can work as freelancers, they can engage with one or the other depending on their availability and their need. So that way, it can be used as a model for all kind of testing. It is just that you have to think how to introduce crowd. It is not that for, if you're doing some sort of security testing, you introduce 50 people there and you ask them to do crowd testing. It does not work that way. In those cases, you have to engage say 3 or 4 your null testers or your security white hat experts in your community. Introduce 3 or 4 of them. Ask them to do part-time, penetration testing for your application and then go. So as a concept, crowd is something that can be applicable to all different testing types. And you can use them very judiciously in whatever way you want. You can use it in an exploratory mode, you can use it in a test case-based mode, even for automation design. Organizations are using crowd in 3 areas. Okay? The first area is for web, mobile, and cloud-based applications. Its usage is very, very diverse. Which means that people are using it end-to-end. They're using it for even system testing and finally up to user acceptance and feature testing. In other cases, they are reinforcing the traditional testing method, which is like beta testing. They're using it for data entry, data obfuscation, those small micro tasks that you have within your testing organization. They can all be crowdsourced. And finally, a lot of organizations, even large organizations, are using this to gain access to part-time talent. So if they are, even the largest of companies are using contractors, right? Every company needs some flexibility and scalability. So they don't have everybody as employee. They use some freelance contractors who come and work for 6 months, 12 months. Instead of that, they can use this model. They can use crowdsourcing to engage for part-time whenever they need that spike and then let them know. So it's a very, very diverse applicable kind of a model. This is an industry analysis for crowd testing and its applicability. A lot of questions related to data privacy and how crowd testing can be used in a very, very secure kind of a sensitive kind of a project environment. So if you look at the x-axis, it shows how an increasing data privacy requirement, and the y-axis is the more and more control you need to bring into your crowd. So if you look at the bottom left quadrant, that is where your social and open applications can run. So this is the crowd testing that you see people doing every other day on Facebook. Surveys, asking questions, taking opinions. That is this crowd testing, which can be done in open content without any management. As you move ahead, as more and more security is required, or if you move here where more and more control is required, then you see things like if it's a product, it's a high-tech solution. If it's a consumer banking healthcare applications, where it requires more domain knowledge, where it requires more product knowledge. In those cases, crowd testing requires more managed and controlled way of operating. And that is where you are moving into an enterprise kind of a world. And if you go further to the right, as you increase more and more into your classified kind of a situation, then we look into private crowd. So you are starting from a public open crowd, moving into a private crowd, and further more and more you move into an in-house team. So this is a typical map of where crowd testing can be applied in industry. Any questions at this point?
Those identified professionals from the crowd, so it will be shared like any knowledge base or any user stories?
Yes, so it's a technology through which you actually manage all of it. You need to have cloud-based test management systems, documentation, sharing, instructions. So there need to be a platform through which you can communicate with your community. You can interact with them, you can select them, and then you can train them for a specific project. It is very typical to any in-house project where you do it with your team. If you're sitting at say US and you are training your offshore team here, it is very similar to that. It's just that your team is distributed. If it's a high sensitive and more domain oriented kind of a project.